This episode of Please Explain is sponsored by Aware Super, helping you get more from your future. From the newsrooms of the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, this is Please Explain. I'm Samantha Salinger-Morris. It's Thursday, August 3rd. Is it possible that the United States government has been hiding evidence of discovered UFOs and even biological matter of non-human origin that it's also found? These were the jaw-dropping claims made last week by an American whistleblower and former intelligence officer. David Grusch's testimony was at the heart of a U.S. congressional hearing to discuss sightings and evidence of what is now being called Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. Today, Dr. James Murray, Programs Director at Astronomy Australia, on the hearing that has grabbed the world's attention. So, James, an American congressional subcommittee met last week in Washington, D.C. to hear testimony from several military officers who allege that the American government is actually concealing evidence of UFOs. Understandably, this garnered massive worldwide attention as thousands watched these publicly televised hearings to discover if there are, in fact, aliens among us. So why was this such a big deal?
The first time I heard about this, I was driving my son to his swimming, and I almost drove off the road because I was listening to the radio and I said, well, this guy he's going to testify to Congress about the aliens.
Tomorrow, the first public hearing will be held by the House Oversight Committee into what's called Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, or UAP.
And I saw on Twitter a couple of days before that this was going to be the biggest news in the history of mankind.
What are these unidentified objects? Where did they come from? And are we alone?
Are we alone?
I understand that there were people sort of queuing up to get into the hearings. There was a lot of people very, very interested and very, very excited to hear about this proof that there were aliens out there.
Good morning and welcome to the most exciting subcommittee in Congress this week, the Subcommittee on National Security of the Border and Foreign Affairs, for discussion of unidentified anomalous phenomenon. The lack of transparency regarding UAPs has fueled wild speculation and debate for decades, eroding public trust in the very institutions that are meant to serve and protect them, as is evidenced by the large number of people we have here. I'd like to thank the brave military pilots and personnel, such as the witnesses on the panel today, for sharing their stories on how they have engaged UAPs, which has brought attention to this matter. Curiosity and speculation.
The guy at the centre of this, David Grusch, has been talking about it over the last few weeks and months. I heard him talking on the radio not so long ago, and I think that it's all built up, and so people were going, there's got to be something here. This is it. We're going to find out about aliens.
Okay, so tell us a bit more about David Grusch, because he is, of course, at the center of this. He's made these bombshell testimonies. He's a retired Air Force intelligence officer. So can you tell us a bit about David Grusch and what he has actually alleged?
He has been involved in these programs to try and work out what these, I like UFOs, but Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, or UAP. So he's been involved trying to explain what's going on. He's decided that there is another program somewhere else within the government where they actually have these UFOs, they have these alien craft. And he's become convinced of this, and he's started to talk about it.
I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower. As you know, I've suffered retaliation for my decision, but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead to a positive outcome of increased transparency.
David was really talking about an immensely long program where they've actually found crashed alien craft, and then they're now trying to work out what the technology embedded in that was. And he also claims that there were life forms within those craft.
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
Do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
The other two witnesses, Ryan Graves and David Frevor, they were pilots and they saw things that they couldn't explain. When they are flying around, they tend to be flying in sort of restricted areas.
So we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat. Looked down a small, saw a white tic-tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping pong ball. There were no rotors, no rotor wash, or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings. As we started clockwise towards the object, my Wizzo and I...
He has made incredibly sort of jaw-dropping claims. So did that make your jaw drop?
I think, yes, when you hear it, you think, wow, this is it.
It's the government hiding aliens from us. There was just a whole congressional hearing about UFOs and aliens. A former U.S. Air Force
the congressional hearings with the UFOs? Did you watch it?
These aliens, they're hella violent. They're waging war on us. We don't have the weaponry to fight back. Go ahead and tie up any loose ends.
But the critical thing is, this is all secondhand. He hasn't actually seen them. He is reporting on what he's been told.
Grusch, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself of non-human origin craft?
Yes, I personally interviewed those individuals.
But his background is essentially a level of involvement. He is from a military background, and you can kind of tell that he doesn't have a lot of science background because you have a look through the way he describes what he's been hearing from other people. There's not a lot of science in it. It does sound very Star Trek-y what he does say.
And we did meet with one member of the flight crew who took the image. The image was of something that I am not able to attach to any human capability, either from the United States or from any of our adversaries.
This whole thing was a little bit of a disappointment at the end of it because we thought there is going to be some sort of evidence there, but it's secondhand. So I think that there's a bit of a letdown at the end of all this process.
And just how common are these UAP sightings anyway?
Yeah, so NASA has got a panel. They're looking at all these sightings over the last few decades, and I understand that they come in at around 100 a month. And to me, that's not a surprising number, actually, given the number of aircraft that are up there and the number of people that are looking at the night sky and just wondering what's going on. So there's actually, if you have a look around and have a look at the old Pentagon movies of the sorts of things that these pilots see, their lights that flash across their instruments and things like that.
And just to be clear, these are the videos that came out in 2017 by the Navy pilots? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the one.
My gosh.
You can see the first one, it looked like there's like a bullet going across the screen, and they said, well, this is going against the way the wind is blowing, and there was a lot of chatter on the intercom about what it was. They didn't know what it was.
Against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
That it's all black and white. It's pretty grainy because the videos are they're not showing what the pilots saw, but they're showing what their instruments have recorded.
And it's interesting with regards to how much interest this latest congressional hearing has drummed up, because right before we started recording, you said you're now getting lots of calls, aren't you? I believe.
Yeah.
If it's not UFO sightings, it's something else, isn't it? Like related to it.
Yeah, and I think it is bubbling up. And I think post-COVID, everyone's just a little bit more anxious about stuff, and people hear stories about all sorts of things now. The social media is very alert to all these ideas.
Ma, you see this?
No. Holy shit. What the hell is that?
What is happening? You guys see this?
I tend to come into contact with a lot of people who claim they've seen something they can't explain.
Don, are you seeing this? Bro, my heart just sank.
when I get a phone call and someone says, I've seen something in the sky, there's a sort of a short list of what it could be. One is a drone, people flying a drone at night. It could be Venus. If you have a look at Elon Musk's Starlink satellites, when they launch in a long string of bright lights that travel quite rapidly across the sky. And that's startling. And I've had people send in photos. And then, of course, there's also meteors and meteorites. So it kind of tells you it's pretty easy to confuse us.
We'll be right back.
I'm Scott Hayward, and with me from Aware Super is Peter Hogg, Head of Advice Experiences and Enhancements. Low, medium or high-risk investment options. Tell us, Peter, which super option should people choose?
Well, Scott, if your retirement is a long time away, your super might be better off in high-growth investments. These are high risk, meaning they're more affected by the ups and downs of the market, but they'll generally grow your super faster over the long term. But if you're starting to edge closer to retirement, you might want to play it safe and invest in more defensive assets, so you can still grow your savings, but with less risk. If you're not sure which option is best for you, the good news is that you don't need to be an investment expert to work this out. Many funds offer support to help you make this decision. Aware Super members can put their money in our My Super Lifecycle option, which automatically tailors their investment mix based on their age.
Good advice, Peter. Contact your super fund to find out if you're in the right investment option. With super advice and super terms, Aware Super is super helpful. For more information about Aware Super, including their PDS and TMD, visit aware.com.au.
And so underlying this congressional hearing, though, that took place last week, is this push from within members of the government for much greater transparency from the government on, we'll call them UFOs, they're now calling them UAPs. So what has the government's response been to this?
Congress and Senate in the US want more transparency from government. So there's a broad push for more transparency. I think it's the latest in what's actually been building up for a couple of years now. So it's not the first congressional hearing, and it's not the first time people have talked about these unexplained phenomena. And it's built up. Oh, but I think it would be a generally good thing if they did put a bit more effort into explaining these sightings, because fundamentally, if you, as someone who flies occasionally, I don't want the pilots to be seeing things that they can't explain and then sort of, I don't know, taking evasive action over something that turns out to be a piece of plastic or something like that.
And so to be clear, though, with the latest, response to the congressional hearing last week, the Pentagon has denied the claim that there's any evidence of non-human biologic material that has been collected from these supposed UFOs that these whistleblowers have alleged to have been found.
Yes, they have. But funnily enough, it seems that what David Grusch has been talking about, depending on who you believe, he's had their approval to actually talk about it. Like he's had his statements to Congress sort of vetted for anything that might be confidential. So I don't know what you read into that.
Do you believe that perhaps there's some sort of hidden agenda within the American government, as I believe has been suggested, that they wouldn't want anyone else to know, any other countries to know, if indeed they had discovered non-human aircrafts or material, because that could be a threat to national security if other countries discovered that not only do we have this, but we're working out, what they're made of, we're getting down to the technology.
That, I reckon that would probably be true, but I think you also somehow find, just imagine that there was some sort of technology that they did discover, they would start using it. And you'd see it in what you see in the military and wherever. You might see Joe Biden, for example, teleporting himself across the states or something like that, but you don't. You just don't. I'm sure he'd love to teleport.
And it does make me wonder, with this most recent hearing, it's brought a lot of attention to UAPs. Perhaps it's leading to more reporting of them. But will it actually result in any more robust evidence that's necessary to improve our understanding of UAPs or change anything, do you think?
I think there's a possibility that it may. The really sad thing about this whole saga and about aliens is that over the course of our lifetime, the actual science of trying to understand if there's life out there in the galaxy has just come forward hugely. And not one of these reports, none of the discussion about whether there are aliens here has actually talked about what we actually know. Just before the turn of the century, we only knew about one solar system. That was our own. We had no idea whether planets were likely, unlikely, whether Earth-like planets were likely, unlikely. It was in the realms of science fiction. Now we know about 5,000 odd planets. There's a whole new area of science where people are trying to understand what life might look like on some of these planets. And not only are we just saying that's a planet, we're able to say that's a rocky planet and that's what's in its atmosphere. So the technology's just taken off. I'm hoping that maybe the US government will release some of their footage and some of the sighting data and just let people go nuts on it and work out what is actually happening. I mean, I think that would be a great thing. We could have a citizen science project where we actually try and explain all this data.
Thank you, James, for joining us.
Thank you.
Today's episode of Please Explain was produced by Julia Carr-Katzel. Our executive producer is Ruby Schwartz. Please Explain is a production of The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. If you enjoy the show and want more of our journalism, subscribe to our newspapers today. It's the best way to support what we do. Search The Age or smh.com.au/subscribe. I'm Samantha Selinger-Morris. This is Please Explain. Thanks for listening.
This episode of Please Explain was brought to you by Aware Super. With super advice and super returns, Aware Super is super helpful. For more information about Aware Super, including their PDS and TMD, visit aware.com.au.